Welcome to Creepy Vibes. Tonight, we're venturing deep into the wild, where the forests are dense, the nights are silent, but something is always lurking just beyond the campfire's glow. From eerie whispers in the dark to shadows that move. On their own, get ready for 5 of the most disturbing true camping horror stories that will make you question what's real and what's waiting in the trees. But before we begin, here's something strange. Most viewers make one huge mistake. They leave without subscribing. And by doing so, they miss out on the creepiest, spine-tingling tales that only the bravest dare to hear. Don't be one of them. Hit that subscribe button now. Because tonight's just the beginning, and the terror waiting in the darkness is far from over. So, where are you watching from? And what time is it there? Let me know in the comments, because here, the night is only getting started, and the horror is waiting to unfold. Now let's dive into the darkness. It started like any other college camping trip. Last-minute plans, cheap gear, too much beer. Tyler, Josh, and Mason had just finished finals at Southern Illinois University and wanted a weekend far away from everything. No phones, no professors, no deadlines, just the forest, the fire, and freedom. Tyler had been to Shawnee National Forest before and promised them the spot would be perfect. Quiet. Off the grid. Somewhere no ranger would bother them, and no other. Campers would stumble in drunk at 2 a.m. They drove hours past the official campsites, deeper into the trees until the dirt road ended in a mess of brambles and mud. The place felt ancient, untouched. The kind of woods that made you feel like you were being watched even when you were alone. But that was the point. They set up their tents beside a dry creek bed surrounded by tall, thin oaks. It was peaceful, still. The sun went down behind the trees and the sky opened up with stars. They built a small fire, drank cold beers, and talked about girls, stupid professors, and the future. The air was crisp. The night felt right. That first night, Tyler woke up just after midnight. He wasn't sure what stirred him, but something felt wrong. The fire was out. The woods were silent. Too silent. No crickets. No wind. Just a heavy kind of quiet that pressed against the tent. Then he heard it. Above him. A slow, deliberate scratching. Not on the tent, but in the tree directly over it. It sounded like fingernails on bark. Dragging. Long strokes. Methodical. Tyler held his breath. It kept going. Then stopped. Then breathing started. It wasn't his breath. And it wasn't coming from Josh. Josh was asleep, snoring lightly on the other side of the tent. The breathing was coming from above. Not animal breathing either. It was raspy, like old lungs. Wet and labored. Something human, something not right. Tyler didn't move. He just lay there, wide-eyed, waiting. After a while, the breathing stopped. He didn't sleep the rest of the night. The next morning, he tried to laugh it off. Probably a raccoon, maybe an owl, something up there doing its thing. He didn't tell Josh or Mason. They were in good moods, and he didn't want to ruin it. They spent the day hiking and swimming in a nearby stream. Everything felt normal again. But when they came back to the tents that evening, they noticed the prints. There were 5 handprints on the roof of their tent. Big ones. Human. Each one spaced like someone had leaned down and pressed both hands against the nylon. But the fingers were too long. Way too long. And the left pinky on one of the prints was bent backwards like it had been broken and healed. Wrong. Mason joked about some homeless guy living in the woods. Josh laughed. But it was forced. Tyler didn't say anything. He just stared at the tree above the tent. That night, none of them slept. Around 2 in the morning, they heard it again, the scratching, the breathing. But this time, it was joined by something else. Laughing. Thin and high, like wind whistling through teeth. It circled them, moving from tree to tree. Sometimes it would stop for long stretches, then start again suddenly, like it was testing them, seeing how long they could take it. Mason whispered prayers. Josh buried himself in his sleeping bag. Tyler clutched a pocket knife and stared at the zipper, wondering if whatever was out there was staring back. When morning came, the silence was replaced with a strange tension. Josh was pale. He didn't eat. He didn't talk, just kept glancing at the trees with wide, unblinking eyes. Tyler asked him what was wrong, and after a long pause, Josh said, "I saw it. Last night. Up in the branches." Mason asked what he meant. Josh just shook his head. It was watching us. He wouldn't say anything else. That afternoon, Josh wandered off to pee and didn't come back. At first, they thought he was messing around. He'd done that before, disappeared into the woods and jumped out to scare them, but after 20 minutes, then 30, they started calling for him. An hour passed, then 2. They searched the forest, yelling his name until their throats were raw. Nothing. No footprints, no broken branches, just that eerie quiet again. Like the woods had swallowed him whole. They returned to the campsite, hoping maybe he'd made it back on his own. But when they got there, they found something else. Josh's sleeping bag was zipped up neatly, pillow still inside. No sign of struggle. And above the tent, carved deep into the bark of the old oak, was a message. "I like watching you sleep." The letters were long and jagged, as if scratched in with broken fingernails. They never found Josh. The rangers searched, for 3 days with dogs and drones. Nothing. Not a sock. Not a footprint. Just 2 scared college kids with a story no one believed. They said maybe he fell, maybe he ran off, maybe it was drugs. But Tyler knows better. He remembers the breathing, the laughter, the handprints with the backward pinky. He knows something was up in those trees. And sometimes, late at night, he swears he can still hear it, just outside his bedroom window, breathing, watching. Big Sur had always had a kind of haunted beauty. There's something about the place that crawls under your skin, the cliffs that fall into the Pacific like the world's edge, the dense redwood forests that seem to shift when you're not looking, and the fog. God, the fog. It rolls in like a living thing, thick and heavy, swallowing sound and light like a beast. Cassie and Derek had no idea about any of that when they decided to honeymoon there. They were city kids, newly married and glowing with that dumb golden confidence that comes right after the vows. Derek had read about a secret trail online, some forum full of backpacking diehards and ghost stories. It was a cliffside path, mostly unmarked, that led to a flat patch of land, just above the sea. No campgrounds, no rangers, no tourists, just the wild and the waves. It sounded perfect. They parked the car off Highway 1 and hiked in with their gear. Light backpacks, new boots, fresh smiles. The trail was narrow and uneven, weaving between pine and redwood, then opening onto bluffs that overlooked the vast, endless black of the Pacific. They found the spot a little before sunset. A soft piece of ground surrounded by tall grass and low trees, just enough cover to feel safe, but open enough to catch the sound of crashing waves far below. They pitched their little orange tent, cooked ramen on a camp stove, and watched the sun dip into the ocean like a coin falling into a bottomless well. It should have been romantic, and for a while, it was. Until just after midnight, Cassie was the first to wake. At first she didn't know. Why? Just a sick feeling in her gut, like something was wrong in the world. Derek was still asleep beside her, breathing slow and steady. She lay still, listening. Then the scream tore through the woods. It was high and human and full of pain. Not an animal. Not a prank. It sounded like someone being murdered. One long, desperate scream that was cut off too fast. Then silence. Then another. This one was closer. Cassie sat up, gasping. Derek bolted upright next to her, confused and groggy. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. He didn't have to answer. Another scream echoed through the trees. Closer now, more ragged, like whoever was making it had been running for miles. Then another, and another. They fumbled with the tent zipper, their hands shaking. When they opened it, the fog had rolled in so thick it was like breathing cotton. Their headlamps barely cut through it. Trees twisted in the mist like black fingers. But there was no one there. No footsteps, no rustling, no sound at all except the occasional distant crash of the ocean. They didn't talk, didn't need to. They started throwing their stuff into their packs without even thinking about it. Just grabbed whatever they could and started back down the trail. The fog moved with them. It wasn't just thick, it followed. Every time they paused to get their bearings, it closed in tighter, like it wanted to wrap around their throats. Every so often, one of them would glance behind and swear they saw movement. Just a flicker, a shape in the trees. But it was always gone by the time they turned to look fully. The screaming had stopped, and somehow that was worse. They made it back to the car just before sunrise, soaked with sweat and shaking. They didn't speak until they were 10 miles, down Highway 1. Derek finally broke the silence. "That wasn't human," he said. Cassie didn't answer. She couldn't, because deep down, she thought he might be right. They tried to forget about it, told their families it was a bear, a coyote, some crazy guy in the woods. They never mentioned the fog, or the shape Cassie thought she saw out of the corner of her eye. Something tall and pale and wrong, standing perfectly still behind the tent as they ran. 2 weeks later, back in LA, Cassie found something on her phone, a video. She didn't remember taking it. She was scrolling through her photos from the honeymoon, smiling at the beach selfies and dumb pictures of their half-cooked campfire meals. Then she saw the file, just labeled Vid Wo132. No thumbnail, just black. She played it. It was shaky, dark, fog-drenched. A video taken from outside the tent. The camera pointed at the trees, not moving, just watching. In the corner of the screen, you could just barely see the edge of the tent, and the arm holding the phone, it was hers. She was filming, but she didn't remember getting up, didn't remember unzipping the tent, didn't remember standing in the freezing dark alone, holding her phone out like a flashlight into the trees. Then the camera moved slightly, just enough to reveal something behind her, something tall, something thin, something impossibly pale, with arms that bent the wrong way and eyes that glowed like coals in the fog. The screen went black. She threw the phone, screamed so loud the neighbor banged on the wall. Derek came running in and found her curled on the floor, sobbing. She showed him the video. He watched it once. Never again. They don't talk about Big Sur anymore. But sometimes when Cassie wakes, up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, certain she heard a scream just beyond the window, she thinks about going back into her phone, just to check, just to make sure there aren't any new videos, because something about the fog that night didn't feel finished, and she's starting to wonder if she ever really left. The Okefenokee is the kind of place that doesn't want to be found. Not really. It sprawls over nearly 500,000 acres of swamp and fog and dying light, tucked deep into southern Georgia like a secret that should have stayed buried. The locals say it hums at night. They say if you stay too long, it remembers you. But Carl didn't believe in that kind of thing. Not back then. He just wanted to fix what was broken. His wife, Meg, had died 6 months before. Car accident. Fast. Brutal. One of those awful moments that splits your life into a before and an after. And their daughter, Lily, 8 years old and quiet as a breath, hadn't spoken much since the funeral. So when he asked her if she wanted to go camping, she just nodded. Carl figured maybe a trip into the wild would help. Get away from the house, from the casseroles, and pity and the way neighbors looked at them with wet eyes. The swamp was far enough from everything. Isolated, peaceful. He'd done his research, found a little-known trail out near the water's edge. Not one of the official campsites. Those were crowded, noisy. This was deeper, just a small patch of dry ground, surrounded by black water and tall trees. Perfect for a father trying to reconnect with his kid. Perfect for silence. They set up the tent around mid-afternoon, ate PB&J sandwiches, talked about nothing. Carl was doing his best, trying to smile through the ache in his chest. And as dusk settled in like a heavy blanket, Lily was drawing pictures. In the dirt with a stick, that's when she said it. "Daddy?" she asked, her voice soft and far away. "Why is that man so skinny?" Carl turned. There was no one there, just a line of trees darkening in the orange light. A few birds, the buzzing of swamp insects. "Where, sweetheart?" he asked. Lily pointed between two cypress trees, her fingers still. "There. He's tall, and he's staring." Carl stood, scanning the trees. There was nothing. He smiled, trying to keep his voice light. "There's no one there, Lily, just shadows." But something in her face chilled him. She wasn't scared. Not exactly. Just curious, like the way a cat watches something it can't quite see. That night, Carl couldn't sleep. He kept hearing things, little twig snaps, rustles just beyond the firelight. But that's the swamp, he told himself. It's alive, full of movement, full of lies your brain tells you when it's too quiet. But then he saw it, a flicker, quick, between the trees. Gone, before he could focus. Just the shape of something tall and thin, ducking behind a tree like it didn't want to be caught watching. His blood went cold. Carl lay back, listening to Lily breathe. He told himself it was nothing. Maybe a trick of the firelight. Maybe grief playing games, but the feeling didn't leave. The sense of something watching. Not close, not threatening, not yet. Just there. Patient. Like it had all the time in the world. The next day, he tried to shake it off. They went fishing. Laughed a little. Lily smiled for the first time in weeks, but Carl still felt it. Every time he turned his back. That prickling on his neck. That flicker of motion just behind the trees. When the sun dipped again, he didn't bother with a fire. Just zipped them up in the tent and held his daughter close, humming the lullaby Meg used to sing. Sometime after midnight, Lily screamed. Carl jolted awake, heart pounding. The tent was wrong. The air was heavy, like being underwater. The shadows inside the tent had shifted, and something was in there with them. A shape in the corner, too tall, its head brushing the top of the tent, long stretched arms hanging at its sides, no eyes, no face, just a silhouette darker than anything else. Around it, Carl didn't think. He grabbed Lily and unzipped the tent in one motion, hauling her out into the dark. They ran, didn't pack, didn't stop, just ran through mud and roots and tangled brush, Carl's lungs burning, Lily sobbing into his shoulder. All the way back to the truck. They never went back. He told people it was a bear, maybe a poacher. Something explainable, but he knew better. He never camped again. Lily grew up, did okay, considering. Had a quiet way about her, like she was always listening to something no one else could hear. Years later, when she was in college, someone asked her in a psych class about the scariest moment of her life. She didn't tell the whole story. Just said, "I saw something in the swamp once. It liked our sadness. I think it still talks to me sometimes. In dreams." They laughed, nervous chuckles, kids playing spooky. But the professor watching her from behind his glasses didn't laugh, because he saw the way her hands trembled, and how her eyes were fixed not on her classmates, but on the corner of the room behind them. The darkest part. The part where the shadows bled together, as if she expected something tall and silent to be standing there. Still watching, still hungry. They say Olympic National Park is one of the last true wildernesses left in America. You can walk for a week in there without seeing another soul. Just trees as tall as church steeples, moss that muffles your steps, and a fog that rolls in like it's got something to hide. In the spring of 2003, a man named Colin Marks went in alone. He wasn't reckless, just grieving. His wife had died 2 months earlier. Cancer, the kind that takes fast and mean. One day she was healthy enough to go dancing. 3 weeks later, she couldn't get out of bed. Colin had been with her for every minute of it, and afterward, when The house got quiet and the casserole stopped coming. He couldn't stand the silence, so he packed up his gear, slung on his old hiking pack, and disappeared into the forest. He chose a route deep into the park. No crowds, no rangers, just miles of twisted trails and old-growth trees. He wanted to be alone, wanted the pain to get drowned out by wind and woodpeckers and the kind of silence that's so big it presses against your bones. The first few days were peaceful, cold, quiet. Rain rolled in like a slow curse, soaking everything, but he didn't mind. He kept walking, kept moving forward. Then came the fourth night. Colin was sitting by a small fire near the edge of a ridge when he saw it, just beyond the trees. A light, flickering, soft yellow, swinging side to side, like it was being carried by someone walking. It looked like an old oil lantern, the kind with a metal cage around the glass and a little glass chimney at the top. At first he thought it was another hiker. Maybe someone lost or injured, he shouted. No answer. The light just kept moving. Deeper into the woods. He hesitated, but then he strapped on his boots, grabbed his flashlight, and followed. The deeper he went, the stranger it felt. The forest didn't look the same. The trees were twisted in ways he didn't remember. Bark peeled like dead skin. The air had that static hum, like just before a thunderstorm. But the sky was clear, and the lantern. It never got closer. No matter how fast he walked, it stayed the same distance ahead, swinging side to side like someone was leading him on a string. He kept going for what felt like hours, until the cold got into his bones and something inside him, some buried instinct, started screaming stop. So he did. He turned around to head back. That's when he saw it. There were no footprints behind him, not a single mark in the muddy trail, not one broken twig. It was like he hadn't walked that way at all. And the forest, it had changed. He couldn't say how exactly. The trees were taller, the moss was thicker, the shadows were wrong. They bent the light in ways that didn't make sense, and everything was quiet. Not just quiet, dead. No birds, no insects, not even the whisper of wind through the branches. That's when the fear really sank its teeth in. He started walking faster, then running. But every tree looked the same. The trail curved in ways that felt unnatural, like the forest itself was reshaping around him. He didn't remember how he found his way back. Just that one moment he was running through endless wrongness, and the next he was stumbling into his campsite, gasping like he'd been underwater. The fire had burned out. His pack was soaked with dew. The sky was turning gray with dawn. He collapsed in the tent, shaking, and passed out. When he woke up, it was full daylight. He grabbed his phone, an old flip model, nothing fancy, but something on the screen made his stomach drop. The date. It was 2 days later. Colin had been gone, somewhere, for 48 hours he couldn't account for. Back home, he tried to tell a park ranger. The man just gave him a tight-lipped smile and said, "Best to stay on the trails, sir." That was it. But Colin started doing research, and he found things. Posts on old forums, rumors, whispers, hikers who went missing in Olympic National Park and were never found. Not many, but always in the same stretch of forest. Always around the time fog rolled in thick and heavy, and always. There were stories about a lantern, a swinging light that led people off the path. People said it belonged to a hiker who got lost 100 years ago and never came back. Others said it wasn't a person at all, but something that pretends to be one, something that wants you to follow it, that feeds off the ones who are broken, grieving, soft in the soul. Colin never went back, but sometimes, when the power goes out and the world turns black around him, he swears he can see it from his window. That same swinging yellow light out near the trees, still waiting. And sometimes, only sometimes, he feels like maybe he never did come back from that forest. Maybe the forest let something else walk out wearing his skin. They drove into the Black Hills forest just after dusk. 4 friends from college who hadn't seen each other in years. trying to recapture a bit of their youth with a weekend under the stars. There was Jake, the loudmouth. Rachel, his ex, who still laughed at his jokes. Ben, the quiet one who'd recently lost his job and hadn't told anyone. And Tyler, the planner, the worrier, the guy who always made sure the firewood was dry and the tents were staked right. They were only a few miles from Mount Rushmore, but it felt like another world. Dense pines, deep ravines, and an old tension in the air that even the wind couldn't quite shake off. The gas station they'd stopped at before heading up the trail was one of those dusty roadside places that sold beef jerky and bootleg DVDs. That's where they met him, an old man in overalls and a weather-beaten hat, standing next to the cooler. "You folks camping in the forest?" he asked, not smiling. Tyler nodded. "Yeah, Black Hills Trail. Heard it's beautiful." The old man gave a long look. His eyes were cloudy, but there was something sharp behind them. "You just remember one thing," he said. "If you hear the whistler, don't answer back." Jake snorted. "The whistler? You mean like some ghost?" The old man didn't blink. "I mean like something that ain't right. Something that listens." They laughed it off in the parking lot. Of course they did. That's what you do when an old man tries to spook you with some hillfolk legend. You laugh, you mock, you hike. On anyway, they set up camp by a dry creek bed deep in the forest, far off the main path. The fire cracked. They passed a bottle around, told stories, sang off-key. For a while, it was perfect. Then came the whistle. Soft, slow, like someone gently exhaling between their teeth. At first, they thought it was just wind through the trees. But then it came again, closer and again. Moving, circling. They sat in silence, heads cocked like deer, each one suddenly aware of how dark the forest really was outside the firelight. Jake, in typical Jake fashion, stood up and cupped his hands around his mouth. And he whistled, mocked it, mimicked it, laughed. The forest went dead silent. No bugs, no wind, no crackling fire, just nothing. Then came the footsteps, wet, slow, heavy, like bare feet slapping down into damp earth. Rachel screamed. Tyler shouted Jake's name. But the tent was empty. No struggle, no sound, just gone. The sleeping bag was still zipped. His boots were still by the fire. Gone. They found footprints by the tent, bare feet, wide as dinner plates, flat and deep in the mud, leading off into the woods. They followed them until they disappeared at the edge of a river. They called the park rangers, spent hours giving statements. They were told to pack up and leave the site. "It's not the first disappearance we've had in those parts," one of the rangers muttered. "People get lost." But they hadn't gotten lost. Jake had been taken. A week later, Tyler got a voicemail from Jake's number. No talking. No, just whistling, long, slow, familiar, and faintly, beneath it, like a whisper caught in static. "Don't answer me." He never played the message again. Rachel moved across the country. Ben started sleeping with a shotgun under his bed. Tyler stopped going outside after dark. Sometimes, they say, you can still hear it in the Black Hills. That slow, sad whistle, circling the trees, waiting for someone foolish enough to whistle back.